Division 7, Director Van Dam.
Here.
Division 6, Director Miller.
Here.
Division 5, Director Paris.
Here.
Division 4, Director Lane.
Here.
Division 1, Director Sourceable.
Here.
Division 3, Director Donato.
Here.
Division 2, President Dias.
Here. Pam, could you please announce the officers that are present?
Dwayne Chisholm.
Here.
Attorney Tilden Kim.
Here.
And Pam Clark present for Holly Hughes.
Thank you. Item 3, voluntary public roll call. If any member of the public wishes to introduce themselves, please feel free to do so now.
Vincent Dino, Palmdale Water District.
Hi, Vince.
John Ukestead.
Hi, John.
Jack Cephas, White Fence 3.
Hello, Jack.
Hi.
John Joyce reporting for the Roseman News.
Thank you, John. Item 4, public comments and period open to the public. If anyone wishes to address, please feel free to do so now. Hearing none, we'll move to item 5, adoption of agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt tonight's agenda?
Also move, Mr. President. Director Lane.
Thank you.
Mr. President, this is Rob. I'll second the motion.
Thanks, Rob. Roll call vote, please.
Director Van Dam.
Yes.
Director Miller.
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes.
Director Lane.
Yes.
Director Sourceable.
Yes.
Director Donato.
Yes.
Director Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. Item 7, consent calendar. Do I have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
This is Director Sourceable. I'll move to approve the consent calendar.
Thank you.
Director Miller, I'll second.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Director Van Dam.
Yes.
Director Miller.
Yes.
Director Paris.
Yes.
Director Lane.
Yes.
Director Sourceable.
Yes.
Director Donato.
Yes.
Director Dias.
Yes, the measure passes unanimously. Thank you. Item 8A, Water Master Committee report. Director Paris, do you have a report?
I'll turn that over to Matt.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Director Paris, and good evening, Board. So as you know, I think some of you listened in last week, on Wednesday of last week. The Water Master held the interviews for the 6 candidates for the Water Master Administrator. It was a long day, but we had good participation from the board, and we have a few folks here in person listening and a number of folks on the phone from the Water Master. And the next steps are tomorrow there is a advisory committee, and one of the items on the committee's agenda tomorrow is to discuss any recommendations for advancing the top candidate as a recommendation to the Water Master Board. I don't anticipate that there's going to be a final decision made by the Water Master Board next Wednesday at their regular meeting. So I think we're going to have a future opportunity to discuss this again as an AVAC board and give our recommendation to our representative, Director Paris. I think the best step for AVAC right now is to see what kind of feedback comes out of the advisory committee and what discussion is had next Wednesday at the Water Master. So that's all we had to report on this item this evening.
Sourceable. I think that's a good recommendation, Matt.
Okay.
I agree.
I would like to make a comment. I think you guys did a really good job
and I think very fair, letting the people, the candidates speak. I see there's a lot of talent in that pool, and it was really interesting to cross-examine by the water master directors. I just thought that was a very good process. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it went well.
Matt, Director Van Dam here. Our concern is, as Exhibit 4 landowners, is that some of these people that are running are a couple $100,000 a year. Is that right?
Yeah, Director Van Dam, that's correct. We had pretty wide range of preliminary fee that was submitted in each of the proposals. There's a wide range. I think there's going to be opportunity once the water master kind of narrows the field down with hopefully top 2 or 3 candidates to further negotiate what the annual fee for their service will be. So the fees that they proposed in their written proposal is not going to be the final fee. I think there's going to be an opportunity for us to really fine tune the scope of work and what the annual fee for their service will be.
Right. Right now, our assessments are $5 an acre foot, I believe. And if we hire some of these high-end position or fee, rates, I could see that probably going to $10 an acre foot rather quickly.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the administrative fee that's currently charged. I think that's on everybody's mind, and the water master does have a limited budget, so we'll have to keep that in mind as to who we ultimately recommend and select as the administrator.
Well, thank you very much, Matt.
Yep, thank you. So that's kind of what we'll do, and I'm sure we'll be talking about this again in the coming weeks.
All right, item 9, General Manager's Report. Dwayne?
Thank you, Board President Dias. Here's the General Manager's Report for June 14, 2022. As you can imagine, there isn't much chance of any precipitation during this particular month. We're certainly heading into our dry season. And as you can see from the chart, that, got that. We had, if you're looking at basically our water year's over, you can see this last year in June, we've done a little better, almost a little bit over average, but it's a real weak month. And so we had 3 good months and one that was poor, and then 3 very, very poor months. So, and that's contributed to the situation we find ourselves in this particular water year. Looking at our reservoir conditions, you can see here that these are the reservoirs across the area. These are regulatory reservoirs. You can see they're fairly full in the south. And then some of these in here are about half full. Trinity is very, very low. And this is Shasta. You can see it's very, very low too. So in any event, here's some of the conditions we find ourselves in some of these reservoirs. When you're looking at Oroville, which is our major one, you can see we have 53% of total capacity. Here's our blue line that shows this. This is about average, and this is a couple of the high years. So you can see we're got a little bit more than some of the drier years. So we have some additional capacity in Oroville. This will lend itself very well for getting through the cold water releases that are going to be necessary during the summertime period. And it's 67% of our historical average. When we look at the current San Luis condition, we have 868,000 acre feet in storage. On the chart here, you can see it's over in here. We're fairly in a fairly typical range during this particular part of June and July for drafting this down. And you can see this is how we'll be down in this range more than likely during this period. We're at 43% of total capacity.
Well, I don't know that I need to be on this thing. I don't know what they're already dove deep into the dire situation.
Okay, if you're on the phone, if you could mute yourself, that would be great. We're hearing some conversations in the background. As far as our water treatment plant flows, we got conventional treatment. You can see here we're running about 13 million gallons out of Quartz Hill, and close to 19 to 21. It's beginning to increase. We're still, just to keep it in perspective, we have 118 million gallons of capacity here in as far as the as our rated capacity for the Quartz Hill plant, or total, I should say, of all of our treatment plants. So we're only running about 20% or so, if you look at it all. And as far as our geopurification and treatment process recovery that we have, you can see we got, we're currently doing about 12 million gallons a day. We got our bench rinse wells working, and we got some east side water bank, so a total of 15.7 million gallons a day. The only banking that we're doing is on the east side, just to maintain our storage volume. If you look at our operation maintenance updates, you can see that we're running about 60% of our capacity at the water treatment or the water recovery facilities. I'm happy to report that the plant SNP intertie at the Roseman Water Treatment Plant is complete. Project went very well and is functional now. So what that does is it allows us to use some of our agricultural wells to meet some of that demand that's associated in the northern part of the system. We did have to take extraction well 6 to Bakersfield in order to get the pump rebuilt, and so that should be back in service in about a week. Our filter valve replacement on the east side water bank should be done in the next week, and in the boardroom east window, most of you haven't been to the office in the last few weeks. We did have one of our windows got hit and shattered it, so we're in the process of getting that replaced. And then the operations center roof-mounted air handler has been inspected, and the appropriate parts have been ordered for that. So that's what the operation maintenance is working on and would like to report on. With regards to our water quality updates, we're monitoring our raw aqueduct water, as you can imagine, because there's such a small amount of water that's actually flowing down the canal. Its residency time is much longer than it would be if we had a normal type year, so that affects the water quality. And so because we are a system that takes water directly from the aqueduct, it puts it into our treatment process. That aqueduct water quality is very important for the operators to be able to adjust their processes to completely treat that water. And so this raw water aqueduct quality is very, very important information that the operators use on a daily basis. Well, the lab also completed the quarterly sampling for the last week, and the lab is constantly working under quality control samples through the ELAP program, and we passed on all our second quarter sampling. Wanted to get you an opportunity. There was a presentation, I think it was last Thursday, at the AB State Water Contractors about the voluntary agreements. And also there has been an ongoing discussion with the State Water Contractor Committee that Avek has. We meet on the third, I think it's the third Thursday of every month. And we go over items that are going on in Sacramento, keep the committee abreast of what's happening. And we've been talking quite a bit about the voluntary agreements. And I thought it would be a good opportunity, given that briefing last week, to give the rest of the board a little bit of an introduction to the voluntary agreement process. So this is titled Voluntary Agreements as an Alternative to Unimpaired Flows. And what that means is that there is what they call a water quality control plan for the Delta. And that is approved on a routine basis by the State Water Quality Control Board, better known as the State Board. And they've been going through a process for the last 7 or 8 years to update that process that occurred back in 2007, I believe. And so they've been trying to do that. It's they originally started in 2015 with the Brown administration, and the Newsom administration has continued on and actually advanced those negotiations. And what the idea behind the voluntary agreements is that what the state board had come up with was a concept of unimpaired flow. And so they were going to do regulations based on unimpaired flow, that the flow that was necessary to keep water quality at the levels that the state board has provided regulations for. And irregardless of where that water came from and whether it was really effective or not, they were just going to use a flow control. In other words, more water is better. And primarily what this particular unimpaired flow is intended to do is to keep the saltwater freshwater interface from reaching too far inland. So that's in essence what was coming out. The unimpaired flow was not acceptable to just about everyone, except for the most militant type of environmental groups that thought it was not enough flow. But it was certainly going to spur at least another 10 or 15 years of litigation that was going to occur. So in order to try and avoid the litigation process, they started with these voluntary agreements where there's water that could come from all over the system and not just the State Water Project to be able to help with meeting the water quality goals that the State Board had. So what this means is that it's a voluntary contributions of water and money to be able to fully implement the program. The advantage of this is it can be implemented immediately, so you can see some benefits sooner rather than going through a long, lengthy legal process. And what is included in this system that is different than some of the other regulations, they're using an adaptive management process to coordinate the actions of the science across all specters of the agencies that are working in the Delta. It's also intended to provide some regulatory baseline so that everybody kind of knows what's going to be necessary, and it solves the California environmental incidental take permit and the what they call the ESA. I can't remember what that acronym's for. but there was litigation with regards to that. And so that would resolve that litigation so that that wouldn't continue on. And it was, so this, like you say, it was open to all parties. And this is a water quality plan update. So, whoa, it's fast. We're done here. So what does the program look like?
I have a question about that.
Sure.
The question I have is that in the article that I saw from the state that they're looking at $5 to $10 an acre foot for the state water contractors. And the question I have is that based upon the 145,000 acre feet of water that we're supposed to get, or the water we take for that year?
Yeah, it's the water we're supposed to get.
Oh, because they didn't say that, and I was thinking, you know, that low fee, and I said if it's 5% of our allocation, that's one thing, but you know, if we're going to be tagged for the whole amount and only get 5%, I think that's not. I think that's a joke, but I guess you cleared that up. Okay.
Yeah. Like you say, I think that's the way it is, Frank. I'd have to double check, but I'm almost positive that's what it is. It's $10 per acre foot for your table A amount. So what this program does look like is it's an 8 years. Would give us 8 years apiece. It will solve the incidental take problem and our biops problem that we had, so that we can at least have 8 years apiece where we don't have to have legal actions and injunctions and various other matters through the water quality control plan, and everything's beginning to try and work together. And whether it's a good thing or a bad thing, but at least if we're all working together, hopefully there'll be a better outcome. So the water agencies, and not just the state water contractors, but all the water agencies that are in that distribute and pass water through the Delta, whether it's on its way out to the ocean or otherwise, would be providing additional water for the in order to be able to meet this water quality standard. Also, they're going to improve the funding is for water habitat science, so that they can improve the survivability of some of the fish species that they're intending to protect. There's a lot of state and federal funding contributions, not just state water contributions coming for this overall program. And then they have an all-hands governance program, which is in essence is everybody's at the same table and talking to each other. And so hopefully that'll make things work a little more smoothly. And then, like you say, they're using an adaptive management approach. So because really, to be quite honest, nobody really knows whether this is going to work or not. And to actually go out and test it, make adjustments, and change it around so that you at least end up with the result that you're looking for, I think is a prudent way to go. So, just to give you an idea of some of the totals, and these are all preliminary numbers, and what of how much water would be utilized. And it changes. It's different for each particular type of year, whether it's a critically dry year like you have this year, or a dry year, or below normal, above normal, or a wet year. And then these, here's some of the regions that are providing that water. And you can see exporters are where we're at. And so you can see here, there's a lot of other people involved in providing the kinds of water amounts that we're talking about. These are in thousands, so that's 155,000 acre feet, 825,000 acre feet, 750, 824,000 acre feet, 150 acre feet during the wet season. So that's how much water would be added to the Delta system during those particular types of years through this program. So let's look at some of the basic money aspects. It's a $2.9 billion program. You can see that here that 1.4 is intended to come from the state through their various general funds, bond proceeds. The federal share is $740 million. You got the other is $168 million, which is about 6%. And PWAs, or public water agencies, are the whole, they're about $588 million. That's not just the state water contractors, that's other PWAs that might be part of the Delta voluntary agreements. And so here's your $10 per acre foot that they're looking at. So about $200 million over the 8 years. And then, the $10 an acre foot early implementation and $50 million coming. And so in the event, you got $2.9 billion. It's a fairly significant long-term investment. And as I mentioned, between 8 and 15 years, they'd start looking at it, seeing how it's doing. If it's going well, then they'll continue on. If it's if they could make some corrections or changes to it, they would. If for some reason it just isn't meeting any of the objectives that they had anticipated, then they could stop their program and we could start all over again with a different type of program. But hopefully, what will happen is through a combination of the additional water flow along with the habitat restoration, that there will be some positive changes and it could be extended for the 15 years. I'm just trying to be optimistic here. If that goes through, so that gives you an idea on the voluntary agreements. Any questions on that? I know there's a lot of material here. There's an MOU that's out there. Eventually, AVEC will get an opportunity to take a closer look at that, review it, and we'll have a lot more to say at that particular point when the specifics get closer to be known. So, okay. Let's see. Okay, there it is. Okay, I just kind of went over all that. So, okay. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is, and this occurred at the AV State Water Contractors meeting, is they were conducting a feasibility study on 2 different methods for storing surplus state water project over at Big Rock Creek. If you remember, a few years ago, we initiated a process, and I'd say we as the AV State Water Contractors, between us and Palmdale and Little Rock, and we did a pilot study to determine would it be possible just to have some water from the aqueduct released into Big Rock Creek and to let it percolate to the ground in a natural form, just like Mother Nature kind of does as that program goes, and just to see if that was possible. The hope was that the water that was released would spread out over the riverbed, and it would percolate in the ground before it got too far away. However, what we did find is that the slope of the creek is a little bit greater, and it's been channelized in some areas so that when we release that water, it really ended up in some fairly small defined channels. And so it got down to T and S Street fairly quickly. And it was apparent that no matter how slow the releases were, that you wouldn't be able to get any significant quantity down Big Rock Creek and get it percolated in the ground without some type of enhancement to assist the water in getting into the groundwater basin. So that's what this project was to do, is to kind of look at those 2 different methods of storing water. And there was 2 options. One is just to, extend, build some culverts and some pipelines to allow the water to flow underneath Avenue T. Those of you that have traveled that road, T&S, as they go towards Lake Los Angeles, that they have kind of those Texas crossings where they dip down below and then the water flows over the top. And so being able to put in some culverts along with some of those stretches would allow the water that was released to be able to continue on to other potential spreading zones. So that was one of the projects that was looked at. And then the other was to pipe the water into a recharge basin that was, located upstream and be able to utilize those. And so, so what we had is the culverts were right about $190,000 to $260,000 to do a construction estimate for those. They had a limited capacity of a little over 2,000 acre feet, and the other public benefit is that during low flow, not in big flood events, but certainly in lower flow events, you wouldn't have Avenue T and S flooded, which is a benefit to the public. If you look at the recharge basins, they're more expensive to construct, but the percolation is pretty good compared to other places in the valley, and so they don't have to be the same size. So what you're looking at is $2 to $2.5 million for construction, but you can get 15 to 18,000 acre feet potentially for being able to recharge to be able to recharge in the groundwater basin. We do have some Joshua trees and some other potential things to mitigate, but in essence, it gives you an idea of what the costs are. So if you look at, if you look at those two projects versus other projects on a return on investment, they're pretty cost effective. To be able to get an extra 3, 4, 5,000, we can get 25,000 acre feet into the water during a particular period. So I think it has some merit, to look at because it is fairly cost effective. And then, our next steps would be to finish up the report, summarize the findings, and eventually get into some preliminary engineering if and when we've had a chance to review the report and take a look at it and do the financial analysis that would be necessary.
Dwayne, where does that water eventually flow to?
Well, it eventually flows during the big flood events that have occurred in the past. It flows all the way to the lake and Edwards, yeah.
Now, part of the reason that keeps the lake flat. I mean, is that they're going to affect that?
Well,
that water.
Yeah, this would we wouldn't affect the flood flows for that reason. But what we would do is we'd only artificially recharge when it was not when you didn't have the rain events. So we wouldn't want to. That's one of the factors in all of the recharge type projects, streams, is there's a beneficial use at the end of for Edwards, and keeping that lake flat, and so there's that benefit that you wouldn't want to cut off because you're taking all the water and diverting it before it ever reaches that particular point. So we've been very sensitive to make sure that it's just artificial recharge associated with the State Water Project. So that's kind of where we're at. We haven't seen the final report. We'll take a look at that, but I want to give you a little briefing on what's going on at Big Rock, and there'll be more to follow. But it looks as if there's some potential there that for some kind of project in the future. Okay, any questions before I move on? Okay, as far as events,
how far would that water Dwayne. Director Van Dam, how far would that water flow then without it?
Didn't quite get the whole mix of that. We don't know at the present time, and that's the other aspect of the preliminary engineering. Obviously, if you have water that flows under TNS, there's a certain area where you want to get to. You can control that flow to where it only gets so far before it gets into the groundwater basin and actually ends, and you can control the outlet flow based on what that direction is to hold it back or keep it forward. A lot of replenishment agencies use this technique in order to be able to get to recharge water in the ground. So it's just if you're looking at a combination of the two. We'd have to look at both of it a little bit more closely, but it has some promise. But the aspect is you don't want to create any downstream impacts either on anyone. So that would be all part of the preliminary engineering aspect. Hopefully that answers your question, Gary. Okay. Events and schedules. We got next Tuesday night. We're going to be talking about we're going to have our budget workshop. We're going to talk about it's the first workshop. We'll probably have 2 workshops and then the final approval. And the first one will be 5:30 next Tuesday night. Water master meeting the next day, and then we have the Independence Day holiday. I plan to be here in the office the next 2 weeks, with the exception of a day off on Friday for Father's Day. But other than that, I'll be around. I'll be happy to answer any other questions that you may have with regards to AVEC and its operation.
Any more questions for Dwayne? If not, thank you, Dwayne. We'll move along to item 10. Are there any director reports? If not, item 11. Tilden, do we have an attorney's report tonight?
Nothing to report, President Dias.
Thank you. Item 12. Do we have a request for any future agenda items? If not, I don't believe we have any old business to discuss, so we'll move along to item 14, closed session. Dwayne, do we have a reason to go in closed session?
We do not.
Okay. If not, then do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. This is Shelley.
Thank you, Shelley. Do we have a second?
Director Miller, second.
Thank you, Audrey. Roll call vote, please.
Director Van Dam,
Yes.
Director Miller,
Yes.
Director Paris,
Yes.
Director Lane,
Yes.
Director Sourceable,
Yes.
Director Donato,
Yes.
Director Dias.
Yes, the measure passes. We are now adjourned. Thank you all very much and have a good evening.